Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to start by sharing with all of you some context for Financial Scan and the partnership between NFF and GuideStar, and talk a little bit about how existing grant makers are using the service already today. And then we're going to walk you through a demonstration so that you can see it played out in real time. So NFF's mission is to help the sector more effectively link money to mission. And this new service, which we've developed in partnership with GuideStar, is very much about that, part of our mutual efforts to strengthen the infrastructure of the field by bringing more meaning and insights to financial information. The platform that we're going to share with you today really builds on NFF's experience working with hundreds of nonprofits and grant makers a year as part of our core businesses, and also GuideStar's unmatched access to standardized financial information in the form of the IRS Form 990. What we're really most excited about is the possibility of introducing to the field a new standard for nonprofit evaluation and analysis. Our goal is to democratize access to uniform and comprehensive financial metrics, and to bring greater clarity to the question of what should we measure and why. We also hope that in developing this service that we can help shift the grant maker-grantee dialogue away from how are you spending my money and toward what do nonprofits really need to be more stable and more effective. What I'll say at the outset is that we have not created a ratings tool. We will not be passing judgment through this product or today on whether an organization is healthy or unhealthy, but rather what we want to do is hold up a mirror to some important trends and metrics and empower you as grant makers to have a more informed conversation about the financial story behind some of these numbers. So Financial Scan is premised on our belief that effective solutions, high-quality programs, are very much influenced and driven by a sound financial footing, characterized by a reliable business model and an appropriate balance sheet. If organizations have access to more of the right kinds of financial resources, they're much more likely to achieve their community goals over the long term. There are many obstacles to achieving financial health, but one of them is that the field really lacks holistic, common language and tools for understanding what it takes to be financially healthy. And so Financial Scan is really about demystifying nonprofit data and illuminating nonprofit health. So why now? Well, as I just mentioned, the sector lacks a common vocabulary and a common understanding of what to measure, what it means, and how to interpret that information. Instead, we find that all too often the field focuses on one-size-fits-all metrics, like spending ratios, like the overhead ratio, rather than on some of those vital signs, like how profitable is an organization, how much liquidity does an organization have, what's the right composition of its assets and its net assets. So we hope that Financial Scan is going to eliminate some of the arbitrary focus on spending ratios and place it where it needs to be, again, on those indicators that are most closely associated with efficiency and effectiveness. And second, financial analysis can be cumbersome. It takes a lot of time. It requires a great deal of sophisticated skills, and not all of us have the time or the background to give it justice. We see in our work that nonprofits are often asked to produce very different data sets and reports for a diverse set of funders, which distracts them from doing what they do best. And at the same time, as funders, you spend a great deal of time poring over these data sets and trying to draw sound conclusions based on data that oftentimes is not comparable. So again, that's what Financial Scan is really meant to address. So what is it? At a glance, it is a data platform available both in an online environment via GuideStar's website and as a printable, downloadable PDF report that the user can produce after going through the online environment. The scan can be run on up to 280,000 nonprofit organizations which file the IRS Form 990 to the IRS, which is then sent to GuideStar and digitized by GuideStar. We've really designed the service to be available to many different users. For nonprofit leaders and boards, we hope that the service will help them strengthen their planning, communications, and decision-making capabilities. And for you as funders, we hope that it will help standardize and strengthen your financial knowledge and skills so that, again, you can make better decisions based on those important key financial metrics. The data source, as I mentioned before, is directly from the IRS Form 990. What I will say is that currently the product does not produce an analysis of organizations that file the Form 990 EZ. These are the very small organizations, ones that have revenue of under $250,000 a year and assets of under $500,000. So the scan report in its current form does not analyze those smaller organizations, but anyone who files the IRS Form 990 will be in here. So when we developed Financial Scan, we actually spoke to over 40 funders, nonprofits, and philanthropic advisors who volunteered to join our focus groups and give us feedback along the way on pretty much every aspect of Financial Scan. And we now have scores of grantmakers and nonprofits who are using the service, and we've also been interviewing them to find out how they use the service and how we can make it better for the future. And here are just a snapshot of what some of them have said to us. First, there's a real appreciation that it reveals comprehensive trends that look at surpluses versus deficits, an organization's debt and liabilities, various liquidity metrics, and also the presence of restricted funds. We've been told that folks really appreciate that Financial Scan allows for both a consistent analysis but also a great deal of context and educational guidance and accessible narrative for those who perhaps are not financially savvy. Some people have said to us it helps us not just identify strengths but also to raise red flags, which we can then take to our grantees and use in a conversation. We've heard from some of our users that they're presenting Financial Scan to their board as a way of bringing up and discussing some of those financial issues, again, both strengths and weaknesses. And then what we've heard, I think, from almost everyone is that it really saves them a lot of time and resources in doing the financial due diligence. I'm going to just tell you one story of someone we spoke to just the other day. This was a foundation that initially, when it purchased Financial Scan, reran all of their current grantees through the platform because they wanted to confirm, as they told us, both those problem areas that they already knew about and see if they did indeed exist, and also identify new areas both of strength and of weakness. And while Financial Scan largely confirmed some of the areas of concerns that they knew about prior to using the product, they also found that it uncovered some good news stories that they could use in conversation with their existing grantees. Right now, this foundation is using Financial Scan both upfront when it collects grant applications and again several months down the road prior to making disbursement decisions. They make frequent use, they told us, of the single-page PDF financial health dashboards that can be produced in Financial Scan and that I'll show you in just a moment. And they insert those in both their board books and in the committee meetings that they have with staff and board representatives. They told us that the peer search was actually a little bit daunting at first, and I'll show you the peer search as well. But now what they've found is that they can actually talk to their grantees about who they think are their peers and run the analysis based on grantee-provided peer organizations. And so now that they have that in place, they're also using the peer analysis as part of their due diligence process. So that's just one example of a Financial Scan user. So what's in a Financial Scan? We're going to pull it up in just a second. There is an organizational dashboard which provides 5 years of key financial trends and ratios for one organization. It looks at the 5 most recent years of data available through GuideStar. There's a graphs and explanatory text section, which provides a much more nuanced analysis of the information made available in the dashboard. It provides a greater sort of depth into expense dynamics, revenue trends, profitability metrics, balance sheet health, and liquidity. And there's a great deal of narrative that you'll see in a moment, which really provides you with some background context on how to interpret the information and what questions you might want to ask your grantees. And then finally, there is a peer comparison dashboard, which allows the user to look at up to 5 peer organizations and to line them up side by side over a 1-year period. So that's Financial Scan. Now what I want to do is actually dive in and show it to you. Okay. So once you've signed up for Financial Scan, the first thing that you will see is this screen here, the welcome screen. And I just want to navigate you for a moment to this page. You'll see the gray bar that goes up along the top of the page. This provides you with some background information, some context about Financial Scan. It answers some of the common questions we hear about the data source and the differences between 990 data and audited information. There's also a detailed glossary that will provide definitions and formulas for absolutely every term in the Financial Scan environment. And I'll show you once we get to the end that there's a place where you can save all of the reports that you've previously generated in case you want to go back and take a look at them later. So I'm going to start by selecting the organization that I want to look at today, and we're going to do an advanced search. If you knew the name of your organization at the outset, you could type in either the name or the tax ID number right here. But we're going to do an advanced search so I can show you this functionality. And this advanced search lets me type in any keywords that I know. I'm going to do Boys and Girls Club. It lets me type in the city, the state, the sector, and anything, any search fields that I'm interested in exploring in terms of revenue size, expense size, or asset size. For now, what I'm going to do is look for a Boys and Girls Club in Arizona. And I'm going to pick Phoenix because I happen to know that there are several Arizona Boys and Girls Clubs. And then I'm going to hit search. And up comes the 5 results that fit my search criteria. And I'm going to select the first one because I know exactly this is the organization that I want to look at. I could narrow my results by using this filter here on the right-hand side if the search results produced many more organizations. What's going to come up now as we're loading is the initial financial health dashboard. Up at the top, I've got some background information about this organization, its contact information, as well as its mission statement. And I have the option to print this financial health dashboard as a standalone PDF if I so choose. For now, I'm just going to hide these details so I can show you what's below. And here is the financial health dashboard. As I mentioned before, it looks at one organization over a 5-year period, and it's going to look at metrics that come from both the income statement and from the balance sheet. Within the income statement, we're going to focus on expense dynamics, revenue sources, and profitability. And on the balance sheet, we're going to focus on several balance sheet composition trends and ratios, as well as several liquidity metrics that NFF uses in our own customized analysis of our clients. If I have any questions about any of these terms, right here on the top right-hand corner is definitions and formulas page, which takes me directly to a window that gives me the definitions and formulas associated with this dashboard. I also can scroll over any of these little yellow eyes for more information about the information that we're going to be talking about and looking at in this dashboard. So here I've scrolled over profitability, and this will provide me with a little bit of perspective on what to look for and how to interpret this information. So in the profitability section, NFF really focuses on the importance of surpluses to organizations' long-term financial strength and ultimately their long-term programmatic effectiveness. So just looking at this dashboard for a moment, we can see quite a bit of information. I can see that this organization experienced pretty steady growth up until the end of 2008, when we see many organizations start to take steps to reduce their expenses in line with the changes taking place in the economy. You see that really quite clearly here, both in overall expenses and more recently in a modest adjustment to the personnel growth rate. On revenue dynamics, I can see on a percentage basis the various trends in terms of where money comes from, and in this case, the organization is receiving the lion's share of its dollars from grants and contributions. We're not focusing on absolute dollar amounts in the revenue section. That's primarily because the Form 990 does not distinguish between restricted and unrestricted revenue, and so what we find is the relative percentages gives us a lot more information about the reliability of funding than absolute numbers. Down on the profitability side, though, it's very important to look at unrestricted profitability to know whether an organization is actually effectively covering its costs in a given year. And we've done that calculation actually by doing a calculation off the balance sheet where we look at the change in unrestricted net assets on the balance sheet, and we use that as a metric for the organization's unrestricted surplus or deficit. Here you see that this organization has alternated between both surpluses and deficits. Down further here, I can look at accumulated depreciation as a percentage of overall fixed assets. This organization doesn't have, it appears that while there's some depreciation that's accumulated on its fixed assets, they're not overwhelmingly depreciated. We also can see that this organization's liabilities represent about 30% of its assets, so it's not terribly leveraged. And then on the liquidity metrics, I see an organization that has 3 months of cash, 9 months of cash and investments, and 15 months of estimated unrestricted liquid net assets, all important metrics of an organization's liquidity. I'm going to move on and quickly take us to the peer comparison section. And here I have the opportunity to select 5 peers to look at compared to the organization that we just talked about. I'm going to stick with Boys and Girls Clubs, and I'm going to look for an organization that has revenue between 5 and 10 million so that we have a sample that looks similar to what we just talked about. And I'm going to pick 5 organizations from these search results that we're going to look at together. Bear with me for a second while I pick 5 organizations. I don't have to use this list. I could go back and search again and pick another organization, but to expedite the process today, I'm just picking 5 randomly from this list. We already have Phoenix. Let's take Tampa. Okay. Now we're going to proceed to the comparables analysis. We're going to see the same dashboard that I showed you earlier, but instead of looking at one organization over 5 years, you're now going to see the target organization that we started with 5 other organizations that we just selected in the most recent year with the exact same metrics that we showed you before. Up at the top, we have our key or our guide, which tells us which organizations we're looking at, and the most recent fiscal year available, which in this case is 2010 for all 6 organizations. I'm going to hide these details. And once again, you see very clearly here the financial health dashboard for 2010 for these 6 organizations. Over on the right, we have a median value for the entire peer group so that you can pick any of these organizations and see how well it's doing compared to the mean or the median for this group. So as a group, you see that pretty much all of these organizations experienced a little bit of contraction in 2010, that a few of them have reported deficits in the recent fiscal year, but that as a whole, they're all pretty liquid. We're seeing a good amount of cash and other forms of liquidity. And then finally, the last step in our process is to generate the final report. This report provides you with the dashboards that we just saw. Excuse me for one sec while I pull it up. But it also takes a deeper dive into some of those metrics and trends that we just saw in a very sort of summary view. So the first page of the PDF report is the dashboard. You've already seen this, so we'll skip through it and move on to the real meat of the report, which is a series of over 12 charts and graphs that go into much greater detail around some of these trends. Every graph starts with a little bit of NFF's perspective on what the information is telling you, everything from how to think about surpluses and liquidity to what does it mean to cover the full costs of doing business, to how should organizations think about growth and scale, to the differences between revenue diversity and revenue reliability. All of that context and educational heft is going to be in this report, providing some context to the numbers. And also under every single graph are 3 to 5 questions that we encourage nonprofits and grant makers to use as they're looking at the information and as they're talking with one another. So I'll just very quickly scroll through so you can see some of the other components of this report. We have major expense categories here. We have a look at estimated full costs of doing business compared to total revenue. In this case, the line is revenue, and the top of the bars are full costs. And you can see that this organization in some years is covering its full costs and in some years is not. We can see graphs on revenue composition, earned revenue composition, contributed revenue composition, you name it, it's in here. And there's also a great deal of content drawn from the balance sheet. So here you're seeing a graph on the organization's asset composition. You can also pull up graphs on liability composition and net asset composition and liquidity. So that's a snapshot of the report. The very end of the report includes a financial health dashboard of the comparables analysis that I just showed you online. And at the very end of the entire report is a glossary with all of the terms defined and the calculations as well. At the end of the day, once you've generated your report and you've left this online environment and gone home, you can come back the next day and pull up My Saved Reports and run once again any of the analyses that you might have run before and want to go back and reference again. So that is Financial Scan. What I would like to do now is pass it back to Pam and take some of your questions.
Thanks, Rebecca. A couple of common themes coming through here, and the first of which has to do with data sourcing. A couple of questions about data sourcing from the Form 990. Some folks are saying, we typically rely on audits. Can we trust this 990 data? What are your thoughts on that, Rebecca?
Sure. I think that audited information is in many ways more comprehensive. It goes into greater nuance than the IRS Form 990. So we would certainly never recommend that you do 990 analysis as a replacement for an analysis of audits. What I can tell you is that doing rigorous due diligence around audited financial information is a pretty time-consuming process, and every organization will present its audit in a very different way. So there's not that comparability factor that we can get to very easily with the Form 990. We've talked to a number of grantees who are doing a little bit of both. So they're using the Form 990 and Financial Scan to do their initial due diligence to get a sense of strengths and weaknesses, and then they're looking at the most recent audit as a way of understanding right now how is my grantee or prospective grantee doing, and they're finding that coupling them in that way is very helpful.
Thanks, Rebecca. A couple of related questions about the time frame. How long after the 990s are filed with the IRS do they become available and integrated into Financial Scan? And I can take the first part of that. Thanks, Eric, for the question. There are many variables, obviously, that go into that, and the answer is anywhere from 4 months to 14 months, and that's obviously a big swag. But again, you have to keep in mind, many folks are filing extensions these days, probably more than times past. There are other variables along the way. So 4 to 14 months, I would say on average, right around 10 to 12. We anticipate by the end of July having consumed most of the 2011 data that we should have available based on fiscal year end dates. So a bit of a lag. We are, looking at other options. We're not there yet, but we are looking at the ability to let a nonprofit provide that 990 to us directly at the same time they submit it to the IRS, and flagging that data a little bit differently within the product to let users know that it's fresher data, but it carries more risk with it because it's not official IRS data. But again, that's concept only, just the sorts of things we're looking at to head this problem off. Katrina asked, how much does the service or product cost? That's a great question. The best suited model for funders and grantors like you are most likely is the annual subscription. And the way that works is for a 12-month period, you can run an unlimited number of financial scan reports, financial health dashboards, peer comparisons, whatever you need to do with the product. You can do it on an unlimited basis for $2,500 per year. We also offer for nonprofits a much lower entry point because they typically, we learned in our outreach and research, that they basically need to run a report on themselves once, maybe twice a year. They can take advantage of a nonprofit express pass. For $250 a year, they can run a report only on their own organization, and they can run the peer comparables as well. And they have a limited time to do that, a 48-hour period to generate that report. So two main options. Most of the folks in this discussion would probably be better suited for that annual subscription. Let's see, what else do we have coming in here? Bear with me, I see some later questions coming in. On the peer comparison screen, Rebecca, if we could go back to the comps analysis, where does it show the year that is being reviewed and reported? So we do that at the top, and we will show you the most recent fiscal year for the selected organization as well as the peers in the group. And this year they're all 2010. Excuse me, in this case they're all 2010. Can you repeat, Rebecca, the information about the unrestricted funds in the profitability section?
Sure. We often get the question, where do you find the profit in either an IRS Form 990 or on the audited financial statement? And NFF thinks it's very important to focus your analysis on the unrestricted change in net assets, because that gives you the best sense of whether an organization can cover its operating expenses in a given year. It adjusts for temporarily restricted money that might be multi-year in nature or for future programs or projects. What we've done in the IRS Form 990 is we've calculated the change in unrestricted net assets on the balance sheet and presented it here in the profitability section. Because revenue minus expenses on the income statement in the Form 990 includes restricted funds, it's not a very good metric of profitability. We know that, and so we've here provided you with the same metric that you could find in your audited financial statements, which is the unrestricted change in net assets. Hope that helps.
Thanks. Jill, you had a question about the one-time purchase that is available to nonprofits. If a nonprofit buys one report during the 48-hour period, is there a limit on the number of reports they can run? So the way it works is that if you're a nonprofit, you can only buy a report for your specific organization. So that means we'll show you the financial health dashboard for your organization, that 5-year trend of balance sheet and income statement data, and then that's the only financial health dashboard you can view. However, in terms of the comparables, the peer analysis, you can run as many permutations and combinations of peer comparisons during that 48-hour window as you want to. So a couple of our nonprofits have said, hey, I've got 15 peers I want to compare against. And the good news is, during that 48-hour period, they can run those different sets of peers, but they all will compare against that one specific target organization. Can you save those reports for future reference is a great question. With the Nonprofit Express Pass, we don't offer that report archive that Rebecca showed you, that's only available with our annual subscription. But keep in mind, every time you generate a peer analysis, you have the ability to save that PDF that you generate. So it's just a matter of generating the PDF and then saving a hard copy to your computer. So there is a way to do it. Just with the annual subscription, it's a little more tidy and convenient for you to check back into that archive month after month.
And I will add, just since while we're talking about the nonprofit version, that we are working with one association now that wanted to make the financial scan available to its grantees or to the organizations within its association, and also wanted to make training available to these organizations about their financial information. So we are actually in the process of developing and delivering right now a training program whereby we make financial scan available to the nonprofit organizations themselves through this association, and we build around it a curriculum. And so that's another interesting alternative to think about.
Here's a good question. Carmen asks, do you provide information on the fiscal year start and end dates for each organization? So she's looking at the peer comparison screen, June, July versus a January through December type organization. And we do not right now, but that's an interesting question and an interesting piece of feedback we've received more than once now. So thank you for that question. That's something we could easily add to the product. Trish asks how many users are able to access the financial scan with the $2,500 subscription. And the answer is that is a price per seat. So if there are 2 or 3 folks in your organization that are going to be accessing the tool on a regular basis, each one of them would be technically required to make the $2,500 investment per year. And let's see what else. I think that covers all of the questions. These have been very rich questions, so we appreciate your thoughtful participation. And it looks like we are about 5 minutes over, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. As you ruminate on this over the next few days and weeks, feel free to reach out to us directly. You can contact Rebecca, or you can contact us here at GuideStar. We'll be happy to help you navigate through this process. So thanks again for all of your time and your diligence today, and hopefully we will talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.